There's a moment in every life when the masks we wear become too heavy to carry, when the roles we play feel like costumes that no longer fit. Maybe it happened to you during a loss so profound it shattered your sense of who you thought you were. Or perhaps it arrived quietly, like morning light filtering through curtains, revealing that the person you've been trying so hard to be was never really you at all. This is the invitation that calls to every soul, not to become someone new, but to remember who you've always been beneath the layers of conditioning, fear, and endless seeking. The journey home to your true self isn't about acquiring more wisdom or achieving some perfect state of enlightenment. It's about the radical act of loving what is exactly as it is, starting with the beautiful, broken, perfectly imperfect human being you are right now, because in the end, we're all just walking each other home. I was Richard Alpert once, a Harvard psychology professor who thought he had life figured out. I had the degrees, the reputation, the intellectual prowess that society told me mattered. I was somebody important, or so I believed. The ego loves these stories we tell ourselves, the narratives that make us feel special, different, better than others. But life has a way of dismantling these carefully constructed identities, doesn't it? Sometimes gently, sometimes with the force of a hurricane that leaves nothing standing. Your sacred collapse might not look like mine. Maybe it was the marriage that ended, leaving you staring at divorce papers wondering who you are without the title of spouse. Perhaps it was the diagnosis that arrived uninvited, forcing you to confront mortality in a way that made all your plans seem suddenly fragile. Or it could have been the moment you looked in the mirror and realized you'd been living someone else's life for so long that you'd forgotten your own face beneath the mask. The ego fights these collapses with everything it has. It scrambles to rebuild, to find new identities to cling to, new stories to tell about why this happened and how you'll emerge stronger. But there's something deeper happening in these moments of dissolution. What feels like death is actually birth, the death of who you thought you were and the birth of who you've always been. When my academic world crumbled, when the comfortable certainties I'd built my life around dissolved like sugar in rain, I found myself in India, stripped of every role that had defined me. I wasn't Dr. Alpert anymore. I wasn't the successful professor or the respected researcher. I was just a confused, seeking soul, raw and open in a way I'd never allowed myself to be. This wasn't failure, it was grace. The universe had conspired to free me from the prison of my own making. Your collapse is sacred because it's the first step toward truth. The ego is not your enemy. It's simply a case of mistaken identity. For years, maybe decades, you've been living as if you were your thoughts, your achievements, your relationships, your possessions. This path recognizes that every act of genuine service is simultaneously an act of self-realization. When you serve others, you discover that there are no others. There is only the one appearing as many. When you feed the hungry, you are feeding an aspect of yourself. When you comfort the suffering, you are comforting your own heart. When you offer love to the world, you are receiving love from the world. The giver and the receiver are one. The server and the served are one. The lover and the beloved are one. The beauty of service as a spiritual path is that it meets you exactly where you are. If you're struggling with depression, your service might be simply showing up for your own healing, knowing that every step toward wholeness you take serves the collective healing. If you're blessed with abundance, your service might be sharing that abundance with others. If you're gifted with wisdom, your service might be teaching. If you're gifted with compassion, your service might be healing. Service also teaches you about the ego in ways that meditation or study alone cannot. When you serve, you come face to face with your attachments, your expectations, your need for recognition. You discover where you're still trying to be the hero of your own story rather than simply being helpful. You learn to distinguish between service that comes from love and service that comes from ego, between helping that empowers and helping that creates dependency. The highest form of service is often the most invisible. It's the presence you bring to a difficult conversation, the compassion you offer to someone who's struggling, the peace you maintain in the midst of chaos. Sometimes the greatest service you can offer is simply being who you are, a conscious, loving presence in a world that desperately needs more consciousness and love. Service as a spiritual path also teaches you about Sura. Endear, you learn to offer your gifts without attachment to the outcome, to plant seeds without needing to see them flower, to love without needing to be loved back. This is Siva, selfless service that arises naturally from a heart that has remembered its true nature. It's not about being self-sacrificing or martyr-like. It's about being so full of love that giving becomes as natural as breathing. The path of service transforms your entire relationship with life. Instead of asking, "What can I get from this situation?" you start asking, "What can I give to this situation?" Instead of seeing problems as obstacles, you start seeing them as opportunities to serve. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by the world's suffering, you start feeling called to be part of the world's healing. This doesn't mean you become a doormat or that you give until you're depleted. Conscious service includes caring for yourself with the same love you extend to others. It means recognizing that your own well-being is part of the well-being of the whole. It means understanding that you can't pour from an empty cup, but you also can't hoard what's meant to be shared. When service becomes your spiritual path, you discover that you're not just walking each other home, you're creating home for each other along the way. Every act of service is an act of homecoming. Every gesture of love is a recognition of the love that we are. Every moment of presence is a gift to the eternal now that holds us all. The greatest magic trick ever performed isn't found in any theater. It's the trick your mind plays on you every single day, convincing you that you are separate from everything and everyone around you. This illusion of separation is so complete, so pervasive, that most people never question it. You wake up each morning believing you are a separate self, living in a separate body, having separate experiences from all the other separate selves around you. But this separation is not reality. It's a cosmic case of mistaken identity. The separate self is like a wave believing it's different from the ocean. The wave has its own shape, its own movement, its own apparent life story. It rises and falls, dances and crashes, seemingly independent of all the other waves. But the wave is not separate from the ocean. It is the ocean, expressing itself as a wave. In the same way, you are not separate from the universe. You are the universe, expressing itself as you. This realization doesn't come through intellectual understanding alone, though that's often where it begins. It comes through direct experience, through moments when the boundaries of the separate self become transparent. Maybe it happens during meditation, when the sense of I dissolves into pure awareness. Maybe it occurs in nature, when you suddenly feel yourself as part of the landscape rather than separate from it. Maybe it arrives through love, when the boundaries between you and your beloved disappear completely. The separate self creates suffering because it's always trying to protect something that doesn't actually exist. It's always defending its territory, asserting its importance, trying to get its needs met. But when you realize that there is no separate self to defend, no territory to protect, no individual needs that aren't part of the universal need for love and connection, everything changes. The fortress you've spent your life building becomes unnecessary because you realize you were never under attack. This doesn't mean you become a doormat or lose your personality. Your unique way of being conscious, your particular perspective and gifts, your individual story, all of these continue to exist and have value, but they're no longer the whole story. You begin to see them as expressions of something much vaster, much more beautiful, much more connected than you ever imagined possible. When the illusion of separation begins to dissolve, compassion becomes as natural as breathing. How can you not have compassion for others when you realize they are not others? How can you not forgive when you understand that the person who hurt you was acting from the same fundamental confusion that you've acted from? How can you not love when you recognize that love is not something you do, but something you are? The separate self is also the source of the fear of death. If you believe you are only this body, only this personality, only this particular story, then death becomes the ultimate threat. But when you realize that your essential nature is consciousness itself, that you are the awareness in which all experiences arise and pass away, death loses its sting. The wave doesn't die when it returns to the ocean. It simply remembers what it always was. This understanding transforms how you move through the world. Instead of trying to get love, you become love. Instead of seeking peace, you embody peace. Instead of pursuing happiness, you recognize the happiness that's always been present beneath the surface of your seeking. You stop being a separate self, trying to find its way home, and start being home itself, recognizing that everyone and everything you encounter is also home, also consciousness, also love, expressing itself in countless beautiful forms. The illusion of separation is not your enemy. It's been your teacher all along. It's shown you what it feels like to believe you're alone so that you can appreciate what it feels like to remember you're connected. It's given you the experience of seeking so that you can recognize the joy of finding. It's allowed you to feel lost so that you can celebrate the miracle of being found. When you see through the illusion of separation, you don't lose yourself. You find yourself everywhere. You discover that you are not a stranger in a strange land, but a beloved child of the universe, playing in the cosmic playground of consciousness, dancing the eternal dance of forgetting and remembering, separation and union, seeking and finding. Aging is not the enemy of spiritual growth, it's one of its greatest allies. While our culture treats aging as a defeat, as something to be fought against and hidden, the spiritual path reveals it as a profound teacher, a relentless guide toward what truly matters. Each year that passes strips away another layer of illusion, another attachment to the temporary, another false identification with the body-mind. Aging is the universe's way of asking, who are you really beneath all the things that are changing? When I had my stroke, I was forced to confront aging in a way I never expected. Suddenly, the body that had carried me through decades of life was no longer reliable. The mind that had been my tool for teaching and understanding was no longer as sharp. The identity I had built around being capable and independent was no longer available. But in losing these things, I discovered something infinitely more precious. The part of me that was untouched by the stroke, unchanged by the aging process, undiminished by physical limitations. This is the gift that aging offers to anyone willing to receive it. The opportunity to discover what in you is permanent in the midst of constant change. Your body ages, your mind ages, your roles and relationships change, but the awareness that witnesses all of these changes remains fresh, timeless, eternally present. Aging teaches you to identify with the awareness rather than with what the awareness observes. The spiritual practice of aging begins with acceptance, not the grim resignation of getting old, but the graceful acceptance of what is. Each limitation becomes a teacher. The body that can no longer do everything it once did teaches you about the difference between what you can do and who you are. The mind that can no longer remember everything teaches you about the difference between knowing information and being wisdom. The social roles that fall away teach you about the difference between how others see you and how you see yourself. Aging also teaches you about impermanence in the most intimate way possible. You can study the Buddhist teaching that all things are impermanent, But when you watch your own body changing, when you experience your own energy shifting, when you feel your own mortality approaching, impermanence becomes not just a concept, but a lived reality. And paradoxically, this intimate encounter with impermanence opens you to the experience of the eternal, the deathless awareness that observes all change. The losses that come with aging are real and deserve to be grieved. The death of friends, the letting go of activities you once loved, the gradual release of independence, these are genuine losses that call for genuine mourning. But within each loss is also a liberation. Each thing you let go of frees you to discover what remains. Each role you release allows you to touch the essence beneath all roles. Each limitation reveals the limitless nature of your true self. Aging as spiritual practice also teaches you about legacy in a deeper way. You begin to understand that your real legacy is not what you leave behind, but what you embody right now. The love you express, the consciousness you bring to each moment, the peace you maintain in the midst of change. These are your gifts to the world, available at any age, in any condition. The fear of a jinn. G is really the fear of losing control, of becoming vulnerable, of facing the unknown. But spiritual practice teaches you that control was always an illusion, that vulnerability is actually a form of strength, that the unknown is where all possibilities live. When you embrace aging as a spiritual path, you discover that you're not losing your life. You're finding it. You're not approaching death. You're approaching the eternal life that has always been your true nature. The elder on the spiritual path becomes a living reminder that essence is more important than appearance, that being is more valuable than doing, that love is more powerful than fear. They show us that it's possible to age gracefully, not by denying the reality of aging, but by embracing it as another form of spiritual practice, another opportunity to discover who we really are beneath all the things that change. Aging asks you the ultimate question: what in you is ageless? And in answering that question, you discover that you are both the changing and the unchanging, both the aging and the eternal, both the human story and the divine essence that witnesses all stories with infinite compassion. The spiritual journey is not a solitary path, it's a collective homecoming. We're all walking each other home, supporting each other on the long journey back to truth, back to love, back to the recognition of who we've always been. This is perhaps the most beautiful teaching of all, that in helping others find their way home, we find our own way home, and in finding our own way home, we naturally help others find theirs. Walking each other home means recognizing that everyone you meet is on their own spiritual journey, whether they know it or not. The person who cuts you off in traffic is walking home. The difficult family member who pushes all your buttons is walking home. The stranger who smiles at you on the street is walking home. The friend who listens when you need to talk is walking home. We're all on the same journey, just at different places on the path. This understanding transforms every relationship into a spiritual practice. Instead of judging others for where they are on their journey, you can meet them with compassion for the struggles they're facing. Instead of trying to fix or change others, you can offer them the gift of your presence and acceptance. Instead of seeing others as obstacles to your own spiritual growth, you can recognize them as your teachers, your mirrors, your fellow travelers on the path home. Walking each other home also means understanding that sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is simply be present with someone in their pain. You don't need to offer solutions or spiritual platitudes. You don't need to make everything better. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give is your willingness to sit with someone in their darkness, to be a loving presence in their confusion, to hold space for their struggle without trying to fix it. This final teaching reminds us that love is not just a feeling. It's an action, a choice, a commitment. It's choosing to see the divine in everyone you meet, even when I can't see it in themselves. It's offering kindness even when it's not returned. It's maintaining your heart open even when the world seems determined to close it. It's remembering that we're all just souls having a human experience, doing our best with the consciousness we have available. The journey home is not to some distant destination, but to the recognition that we've never actually left home. We've just forgotten what home feels like. Home is not a place, it's a state of being. It's the peace that surpasses understanding, the love that needs no reason, the joy that doesn't depend on circumstances. Home is the awareness that you are, the consciousness that witnesses all experience, the love that connects all beings. Walking each other home is the most natural thing in the world because separation is the illusion and connection is the reality. When you help someone else remember who they are, you remember who you are. When you offer love to another, you discover the love that you are. When you serve others, you serve yourself. The one who walks and the one who has walked home are the same consciousness, the same love, the same divine essence expressing itself in the beautiful dance of forgetting and remembering. This is the final teaching and the first teaching, the last word and the first word, the end of the journey and the beginning of the journey. We are all walking each other home, and home is here, now, in this moment, in this breath, in this recognition of the love that we are and have always been. The journey ends where it began, in love as love for love. And in that love, we find that we were never lost, never separate, never alone. We were always home, always connected, always held in the infinite embrace of the one love that is the source and destination of all our seeking. As I prepare to close this conversation with you, I want to leave you with this simple truth. You are not broken, and you don't need to be fixed. You are not separate, and you don't need to be connected. You are not lost, and you don't need to be found. You are love itself, appearing as a human being, having a human experience, learning human lessons, but never forgetting your divine nature. The spiritual path is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you've always been. It's not about transcending your humanity, but embracing it so completely that you discover the divine within it. It's not about reaching some distant goal, but recognizing that you're already home, already whole, already perfect in your imperfection. Every moment offers you the opportunity to practice this recognition. Every breath is a chance to remember who you are. Every interaction is an invitation to love. Every challenge is a teacher. Every joy is a celebration. Every pain is a doorway to deeper compassion. Every experience is sacred because you are sacred. So be gentle with yourself on this journey. Be patient with your unfolding. Be compassionate with your struggles. Be amazed by your resilience. Be grateful for your sensitivity. Be proud of your courage. Be aware of your beauty. Be conscious of your love. And remember, we're all just walking each other home. Some days you'll be the one offering support, and some days you'll be the one needing support. Some days you'll be the teacher, and some days you'll be the student. Some days you'll be strong, and some days you'll be vulnerable. All of it is perfect. All of it is love. All of it is the divine dance of consciousness knowing itself through your beautiful, brave, perfectly imperfect human heart. The journey continues moment by moment, breath by breath, choice by choice. But you're not walking it alone. You're walking it with everyone who has ever lived, everyone who is living now, and everyone who will ever live. We're all in this together, all walking each other home, all finding our way back to the love that we are. Welcome home, dear soul. You've always been home. You're just remembering now. You've been like an actor who's forgotten they're playing a role, convinced that the character they portray is who they really are. The sacred collapse reminds you that you are not the role. You are the awareness that plays the role. This awareness doesn't make the pain less real. When everything you thought you were falls away, it hurts. It's supposed to hurt. Grief is love with nowhere to go, and you're grieving the death of your false self. But underneath the pain, if you're quiet enough to listen, you'll hear something else, a whisper of relief. The exhaustion you didn't even know you were carrying begins to lift. The constant effort of maintaining an image, of living up to expectations, of being someone you're not, all of that starts to fall away too. In the wreckage of who you thought you were, you begin to discover who you actually are. And that discovery changes everything. Not because you become someone new, but because you remember someone ancient, the soul that has been waiting patiently beneath all the noise, all the striving, all the fear, the one who has been there all along, watching with infinite compassion as you played your human game of forgetting and remembering. The collapse isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning of your real story. It's the invitation to step out of the theater of the ego and into the temple of your true nature. And in that temple, you'll find something that was never lost, never broken, never in need of fixing. You'll find the part of you that has always been whole, always been love, always been home. When the dust settles from your personal earthquake, something remarkable happens. In the quiet aftermath, when the old voices of who you should be have finally gone silent, you begin to hear a different voice altogether. Not the harsh critic that's been narrating your life, not the anxious planner always preparing for the next crisis, but something softer, deeper, more ancient. It's the voice of your soul, and it's been waiting patiently for this moment, the moment when you're finally still enough to listen. Meeting your soul in the wreckage is like finding a diamond in the ashes of your old life. Everything you thought was valuable has been reduced to dust, but here's this precious thing that fire couldn't touch, that loss couldn't diminish, that time couldn't erode. Your soul doesn't need to be rescued from the wreckage. It is the rescue. It's been your lifeline all along, though you may not have recognized it through all the noise of ordinary living. The soul speaks differently than the mind. Where the mind analyzes, judges, categorizes, the soul simply knows. It doesn't argue with reality or try to negotiate with what is. It sees through the eyes of love, recognizes the perfection in imperfection, finds the sacred in the mundane. When you meet your soul in the wreckage, you discover that what looked like destruction from the outside was actually liberation from the inside. This meeting isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing conversation that deepens with practice. At first, you might catch only glimpses, like seeing a face in a crowd that you recognize but can't quite place. The soul's voice is often drowned out by the clamor of daily life, the urgency of responsibilities, the pull of old patterns. But as you learn to create space for this inner dialogue, something beautiful begins to unfold. You start to notice that your soul has been leaving you breadcrumbs all along. Those moments when you felt most alive, most connected, most yourself, those weren't accidents. They were invitations. The sunset that stopped you in your tracks, the conversation that left you feeling truly seen, the random act of kindness that brought tears to your eyes. These were your soul's way of saying, remember this is who you really are. The soul doesn't operate on the ego's timeline. It's not in a hurry to fix anything or achieve anything or prove anything. It dwells in the eternal present, content to simply be. When you meet your soul in the wreckage, you discover that peace isn't something you attain, it's something you are. Love isn't something you earn, it's something you embody. Joy isn't something you pursue, it's something you uncover. This recognition transforms your relationship with suffering. The pain doesn't disappear, but it no longer defines you. You begin to understand that suffering is not the opposite of spiritual growth. It's often its most direct path. The cracks in your heart become the places where light enters. The wounds become windows. The very things that broke you open become the doorways to deeper compassion, not just for yourself, but for every being who has ever struggled, ever hurt, ever felt lost in the darkness. Your soul knows something your mind forgot, that you are not separate from the universe. You are an expression of it. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean in a drop. When you meet your soul in the wreckage, you remember that you belong here, that your existence is not a mistake but a miracle, that your particular way of being conscious is needed, valuable, irreplaceable. The conversation with your soul changes you from the inside out. You become less interested in impressing others and more interested in expressing your authentic self. You become less concerned with getting love and more committed to giving it. You become less focused on what you lack and more aware of what you are. This isn't spiritual bypassing or positive thinking. It's a fundamental shift in identity from the small self to the vast self. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more you connect with your soul, the more human you become. Not superhuman, but authentically, vulnerably, courageously human. The soul doesn't make you perfect. It makes you real. It doesn't eliminate your quirks and flaws. It helps you love them. It doesn't make you better than anyone else. It helps you recognize that everyone else is also a soul having a human experience, doing the best they can with what they know. For years, I searched for the perfect guru, the ultimate teacher who would unlock all the mysteries of existence and hand me enlightenment on a silver platter. I traveled to India, sat at the feet of masters, consumed spiritual texts like a starving man at a feast. And while these experiences were profound and transformative, the most important discovery I made was this: the guru you're looking for is already within you, not as a concept or a metaphor, but as a living, breathing reality. The word guru means one who brings light to darkness, and that's exactly what your inner teacher does. While your mind spins stories about past regrets and future fears, your inner guru simply points you back to this moment, to this breath, to this heartbeat. While your ego constructs elaborate defenses and justifications, your inner teacher whispers the truth with such gentle certainty that it cuts through all the noise like a bell ringing in perfect silence. Your inner guru doesn't speak in religious jargon or mystical riddles. It speaks in the language of your own deepest knowing. It might come as a sudden understanding while you're washing dishes, a moment of clarity while walking in nature, or a flash of insight in the middle of an ordinary conversation. The inner teacher is not separate from your daily life. It is the awareness that illuminates your daily life. This teacher within you is infinitely patient. It doesn't get frustrated when you ignore its guidance or make the same mistakes repeatedly. It doesn't judge you for your human imperfections or demand that you be anywhere other than where you are. It simply continues to offer its wisdom moment by moment, breath by breath, with the constancy of sunlight that shines whether or not you open your curtains. The inner guru teaches through experience rather than explanation. It shows you love by loving you unconditionally. It demonstrates compassion by being compassionate with your struggles. It reveals truth by being truthful in its responses to life situations. This teacher doesn't give you answers to memorize. It gives you the capacity to recognize truth when you encounter it. Learning to trust your inner teacher is like learning to trust your own heartbeat. At first, you might doubt its reliability, question its authority, second-guess its guidance. You might prefer the certainty of external rules and regulations, the comfort of following someone else's path. But gradually, as you practice listening to this inner voice, you discover that it has never led you astray. Even when its guidance seemed to lead you into difficulty, you later realize that those very difficulties were exactly what you needed for your growth. The inner guru is not concerned with your spiritual image or your progress compared to others. It doesn't care whether you meditate for 20 minutes or 20 seconds, whether you can quote scriptures or barely remember a single verse. It only cares about your willingness to be present, to be honest, to be open to what is. This teacher within you is more interested in your authenticity than your achievements, more concerned with your heart than your head. One of the most profound teachings of the inner guru is that you already are what you're seeking to become. The peace you long for, the love you crave, the wisdom you admire in others, these are not distant goals to be achieved, but present realities to be recognized. Your inner teacher patiently points this out again and again until you finally stop looking elsewhere for what has always been right here. The inner guru also teaches you to recognize the teacher in everyone you meet. That difficult person who triggers your anger, they're teaching you about patience and compassion. The child who looks at you with wonder, they're reminding you of your own capacity for joy and curiosity. The stranger who shows you unexpected kindness, they're reflecting your own loving nature back to you. When you have found your inner teacher, you discover that the whole world becomes your classroom. This doesn't mean you stop learning from external teachers or that all wisdom traditions become irrelevant. Rather, your inner guru helps you recognize which teachings resonate with your truth and which ones don't serve your path. It acts as a filter, helping you extract the gold from every experience while leaving behind what doesn't nourish your soul. The relationship with your inner teacher is the most intimate relationship you'll ever have. It's more constant than any human relationship, more reliable than any external circumstance, more loving than any earthly love. This teacher has been with you since your first breath and will be with you until your last. It has witnessed every moment of your life without judgment, held every pain without turning away, celebrated every joy without envy. When you truly connect with your inner guru, you stop searching for yourself in other people's approval and start finding yourself in your own presence. You stop waiting for permission to be who you are and start giving yourself that permission. You stop looking for someone to save you and start recognizing that you are both the savior and the saved. The sacred isn't hidden in some distant monastery or locked away in ancient texts. It's right here, woven into the fabric of your most ordinary moments. It's in the steam rising from your morning coffee, the way light falls across your kitchen table, the sound of your own breathing when you finally pause long enough to notice it. This is perhaps the most revolutionary teaching of all, that the divine isn't somewhere else waiting for you to become worthy enough to find it. The divine is here now, expressing itself as your life exactly as it is. Most of us spend our lives believing that the spiritual exists in opposition to the material, that we must transcend our humanity to touch the divine. But what if the opposite is true? What if the most profound spiritual practice is to embrace your humanity so completely that you discover the divine within it? What if enlightenment isn't about rising above the ordinary, but about diving so deeply into it that you find the extraordinary hidden in plain sight? This is the dance with the divine ordinary, the art of finding God in the grocery store, Buddha in the traffic jam, the sacred in the seemingly mundane. It's about recognizing that every moment is a prayer, every breath is a meditation, every interaction is an opportunity for love. The person who cuts you off in traffic isn't just an annoyance. They're a teacher showing you where you still hold judgment. The crying child on the airplane isn't just a disruption. They're a reminder of your own tender heart that sometimes needs comfort. When you begin to see the ordinary as divine, everything changes. Your morning routine becomes a ceremony. Making breakfast becomes an act of devotion. Listening to a friend becomes a form of worship. You don't need to change what you're doing. You need to change how you're seeing what you're doing. The same life that once felt empty or meaningless suddenly becomes rich with possibility, pregnant with presence. This perspective doesn't make life easier, but it makes it more real. You still get stuck in traffic, still deal with difficult people, still face the challenges that come with being human. But now you approach these experiences with curiosity rather than resistance, with wonder rather than judgment. You begin to understand that every situation, pleasant or unpleasant, is offering you something valuable, a chance to practice love, to develop patience, to deepen your understanding of what it means to be alive. The divine ordinary teaches you that you don't need to go anywhere special to find the sacred. You don't need to achieve any particular state or accumulate any specific experiences. The sacred is already here, already present, already available. It's in the texture of your sheets when you wake up, in the taste of water when you're thirsty, in the feeling of your feet touching the ground with each step you take. This isn't about romanticizing life or pretending that everything is perfect. It's about recognizing that even in imperfection, Even in struggle, even in the most challenging moments, there's something sacred happening. Your tears are sacred. Your laughter is sacred. Your confusion is sacred. Your clarity is sacred. All of it is part of the divine dance. All of it is worthy of your attention and your love. Learning to dance with the divine ordinary is learning to live as a mystic in the marketplace, a saint in the suburbs, a sage in the city. It's discovering that you don't need to retreat from the world to find God. You need to engage with the world so fully, so presently, that you can't help but encounter the divine in every moment. This is the ultimate homecoming, not to some distant paradise, but to the paradise that has always been right here, waiting patiently for you to open your eyes. Pain is not the enemy of spiritual growth. It's often its most faithful companion. This isn't a comfortable truth, and it's not one that our culture particularly wants to hear. We're conditioned to believe that suffering is something to be avoided, fixed, or transcended as quickly as possible. But what if suffering, approached with consciousness and compassion, is actually one of our greatest teachers? What if the very experiences that break us open are the ones that ultimately set us free? Conscious suffering doesn't mean wallowing in pain or creating unnecessary drama. It means learning to meet your pain with presence instead of resistance, with curiosity instead of judgment, with love instead of fear. It means recognizing that while you can't always control what happens to you, you can always choose how you relate to what happens to you. This choice, this ability to bring awareness to your suffering, is perhaps the most powerful spiritual practice available to human beings. When my stroke happened, I was faced with a choice. I could rage against this new reality, spend my energy fighting what had already occurred, or I could find a way to meet this profound change with as much grace as possible. The stroke wasn't a punishment or a mistake, it was simply what happened. But how I chose to work with it, how I chose to learn from it, how I chose to let it transform me rather than diminish me, that was up to me. Conscious suffering begins with the radical acceptance of what is, not passive resignation, but active embracing. This doesn't mean you don't take appropriate action or seek help when needed. It means you stop wasting energy on the futile task of arguing with reality. When you can say this is what's happening without the additional layer of and it shouldn't be happening, you've taken the first step toward transforming your relationship with pain. The second step is curiosity. Instead of immediately trying to escape or fix your suffering, you can ask, what is this here to teach me? What am I being invited to learn? How might this difficulty be serving my growth? These aren't questions designed to make you feel better. They're questions designed to make you more conscious. They transform you from a victim of your circumstances into a student of your own life. Your suffering has the potential to crack you open in ways that comfort never could. Grief can teach you about the depth of love. Illness can teach you about the preciousness of health. Loss can teach you about the impermanence of all things. Fear can teach you about the courage that lives within you. Every form of suffering carries within it the seed of wisdom, but only if you're willing to plant it in the fertile soil of awareness. This doesn't mean you should go looking for pain or that you should be grateful for every difficult experience. It means that when pain inevitably arrives, as it does for every human being, you have a choice about how to meet it. You can meet it with the art of conscious suffering, which transforms pain into wisdom, wounds into windows, and breakdowns into breakthroughs. The art of conscious suffering also teaches you compassion for others who are struggling. When you've learned to meet your own pain with tenderness, you naturally extend that same tenderness to others. You recognize that everyone is carrying some form of suffering, that everyone is doing their best with the tools they have, that everyone deserves the same compassion you're learning to give yourself. Perhaps most importantly, conscious suffering teaches you that you are not your pain. You are the awareness that experiences pain, the love that holds pain, the consciousness that can observe pain without being consumed by it. This recognition doesn't eliminate suffering, but it changes your relationship to it completely. You discover that you are vaster than your pain, deeper than your struggles, more resilient than you ever imagined possible. The goal isn't to become someone who never suffers. It's to become someone who suffers consciously, who transforms their pain into wisdom, who uses their wounds as doorways to deeper compassion. This is the art of conscious suffering, and it's one of the most profound spiritual practices available to any human being willing to embrace it. The spiritual path isn't about becoming less human. It's about becoming more human. It's about loving your humanity so completely, so unconditionally, that you discover the divine within it. This is perhaps the most radical teaching of all, that your imperfections aren't obstacles to overcome, but doorways to walk through, that your struggles aren't signs of failure, but invitations to deeper compassion, that your very humanness is not something to transcend, but something to embrace with the fullness of your heart. We spend so much energy trying to become better versions of ourselves, trying to fix our flaws, trying to overcome our limitations. But what if the very things you're trying to change are exactly what make you beautiful? What if your sensitivity, which you might judge as weakness, is actually your greatest strength? What if your struggles, which you might see as failures, are actually your most valuable teachers? What if your imperfections, which you might try to hide, are actually what make you most lovable? Loving your humanness to death doesn't mean giving up on growth or settling for mediocrity. It means approaching your human experience with the same unconditional love that a mother has for her child, a love that doesn't depend on performance, achievement, or perfection. It means recognizing that you are already worthy of love, not because of what you've accomplished or who you might become, but simply because you exist. This love extends to every aspect of your human experience. Your body, with all its aches and limitations, is worthy of love. Your mind, with all its worries and wanderings, is worthy of love. Your heart, with all its fears and desires, is worthy of love. Your past, with all its mistakes and regrets, is worthy of love. Your present, with all its challenges and uncertainties, is worthy of love. Your future, with all its unknowns and possibilities, is worthy of love. When you love your humanness to death, you stop trying to be anyone other than who you are. You stop comparing yourself to others and start celebrating your own unique way of being conscious. You stop hiding your vulnerabilities and start seeing them as bridges to deeper connection. You stop judging your emotions and start honoring them as messengers from your soul. This radical self-acceptance ripples out into every relationship you have. When you're not trying to be perfect, you give others permission to be imperfect too. When you're not hiding your struggles, you create space for others to share theirs. When you're not pretending to have it all figured out, you invite authentic connection with others who are also figuring it out as they go. Your humanness is not a problem to be solved, it's a gift to be cherished. Your tears are not signs of weakness, they're expressions of your tender heart. Your laughter is not frivolous, it's a celebration of joy. Your anger is not something to be ashamed of, it's information about your boundaries and values. Your fear is not evidence of cowardice, it's a sign that you're growing beyond your comfort zone. The paradox of loving your humanness to death is that in fully accepting your limitations, you transcend them, not by becoming superhuman, but by becoming authentically human. In embracing your mortality, you touch the immortal. In accepting your flaws, you discover your perfection. In loving your smallness, you recognize your vastness. This isn't spiritual bypassing or positive thinking. It's the most courageous act possible. It takes tremendous courage to love what you've been taught to judge, to embrace what you've been conditioned to reject, to celebrate what you've been told to hide. But this courage is the doorway to genuine freedom, authentic peace, and unconditional love. When you love your humanness to death, you discover that you are not separate from the divine. You are the divine having a human experience. And that experience, in all its messy, beautiful, heartbreaking, joy-filled complexity, is exactly what the universe ordered. It's exactly what love looks like when it decides to know itself through your particular eyes, your particular heart, your particular way of being alive. True spirituality isn't about what you can get. It's about what you can give. It's not about how high you can rise above the world, but how deeply you can serve it. This understanding transforms the entire spiritual journey from a self-centered pursuit of personal enlightenment into a heart-centered commitment to the welfare of all beings. Service becomes not just something you do, but something you are, the natural expression of a heart that has remembered its connection to all life. The path of service begins with a simple recognition that your pain is not separate from the world's pain, your joy is not separate from the world's joy, your healing is not separate from the world's healing. When you truly understand this interconnectedness, service stops being a duty and becomes a delight. It stops being something you have to do and becomes something you get to do. It stops being a sacrifice and becomes a celebration. Service as a spiritual path doesn't require you to become a saint or dedicate your life to humanitarian work, though some may be called to that. It requires you to show up fully in whatever role you're already playing, as a parent, a teacher, a friend, a neighbor, a citizen. It means bringing consciousness to every interaction, love to every encounter, presence to every moment. The mother who tends to her children with full attention is serving. The teacher who truly sees each student is serving. The friend who listens without judgment is serving.